Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I am the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. Consider checking out the Teach the Geek to Speak Society. It's a monthly membership that offers people ongoing support in their public speaking journey. And to learn more about that, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Bobby Umar. And he started off as an engineer in the aerospace industry, but he's done quite a bit since. Marketing, sketch comedy, personal branding. I mean, what hasn't he done? He's also a speaker, and he speaks on a number of topics, including career development and thought leadership. I'm interested to learn more about his transition from engineering and the decision to strike out on his own. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Bobby.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So from the bit of research I did on you, I saw that you got a degree in mechanical engineering. Where did the interest in mechanical engineering come from?
Well, growing up, I was always very, very interested in science. And I was very good at math and physics, particularly in high school. So, when I looked at the options about what I should do, that was really it came front and center based on my abilities. I certainly wasn't as good as English or history. So for me, math, science, physics, all the different things were kind of what I was interested in. So based on that, I chose mechanical engineering, thinking about, and as a kid, I always had dreams of being an astronaut. So the idea of aeronautics and things like that was quite fascinating to me. So I decided to go down that path.
Nice. So you got a degree in mechanical engineering. So what comes next? Your work as an engineer?
Yeah. So after I did that, I got a job working at Bombardier Aerospace and doing aerospace design and structure design for a while. And what's interesting is that, I started to realize that the degree was different than what I was actually doing as a job. And I found the job to be quite repetitive. I would work on the design of, let's say, a side panel of a plane for 3 weeks. And then 3 weeks later, they give me another panel and I would do the exact same thing again. And I found it very narrow and repetitive. And I was like, wow, this is not as fun as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be me with people and designing things and be like Apollo 13, and it wasn't like that at all. And I was very disillusioned by it. And so I spent about 4 years before I finally left and struck on my own and do something else.
I also noticed from the research I did on you that you got an MBA. What was the motivation to get an MBA?
Yeah, good question. So after I left the engineering field, I was looking to do something else. And so when I looked at other jobs and other engineering jobs, for example, they wanted me to start at the beginning. And I was like, well, I just spent 4 years. I don't want to start at the beginning. And I said, how about management? I've done some management stuff. I've been executives of different organizations. Maybe I could do that. And they are all like, well, you have to have more education. Okay. And then I decided at that point, maybe I should switch careers because this is not really fitting for me. What do I really want to do? And at the time, I'd been running a music theater company. And I was doing a lot of marketing promotion. I was like, that's kind of fun. I kind of like marketing. Maybe go into that. And so I did my MBA, and it was a co-op MBA to help me transition from engineering to marketing. And that's kind of what I did.
How did being an engineer first help you in marketing, if at all?
Well, the best part is, what parts of engineering do I take with me forever and still to this day? My analytical skills, my problem solving skills, right? My reverse engineering ability to look at a problem and go backwards. So I think those things, they stick with you the rest of your life. And so I've been able to use that when it comes to marketing analytics, market research, project management, and things like that. So, it's always been there to help me along the way.
Gotcha. So then you graduate from school, you work as an engineer for 4 years. It's not really working out. You're doing this kind of similar stuff over and over again, very repetitive. You don't want to do it anymore. You try to find another job. They want you to start from the beginning. You said, absolutely not. I already spent 4 years doing this. Especially if you start at the beginning, they probably want you to start at the beginning in pay scale too. It's like, I ain't going back and pay. So now you have to figure out, okay, what I'm going to do next. You go into marketing. So how did marketing work out? How did you like it better than engineering?
Well, I found the work more interesting for sure. And I also found, no offense to my engineering friends, but I found the people more interesting too. Well, because all my engineering buddies, they were certain. Most of them were a certain way. I mean, I was a very super uber personality, so that's why I had a lot of friends in engineering because they kind of like that. But most of my friends in engineering weren't like that. They're a little bit more straight and narrow. And in brand marketing, there was just a whole diverse color of characters everywhere, which way you go. And there's more women too, which, when I was in engineering, it was my engineering friends was like 2 women and there's 20 guys.
Right.
So there was more women. So that was fun. And so I love the people were a lot more fun. I enjoyed that. The work was more interesting to me because it was diverse. I had my hand in I did work in the production plant. I did work in forecasting. I did work in consumer research. I did work in, financials, I sales, I had my hand in everything. I found that diversity very, very interesting. And it kept me, I never got bored. Let's just say I never got bored of my job. I think that, and so I like that aspect. I didn't like the first job because I was, then the second project, which was actually the Dove campaign for beauty, which was fostering positive self-esteem in young women. That was great. I thought that was such a great, noble effort, and I was proud to be a part of that. So, that those parts of it worked very, very well for me.
Wow. Did you notice, you're coming into marketing with this engineering background, and I'm assuming that the people that you work with in marketing, not all of them, probably most of them, didn't have an engineering background. So did you notice any kind of differences to the way they approached marketing as opposed to the way you approached it?
That's a good question. I was naturally fine with numbers. So for me, doing analysis and forecasts and things like that, I was pretty fine with it. Although some of the people that I worked on marketing were pretty good with numbers too. The only thing I could probably think of that was maybe a little bit different was that they mostly had business degrees. So they would often take that point. So I wasn't really feeling like I was behind the times on these guys. I just had the advantage. The 2 big advantages I had was I had the engineering background and I had more life experience because most of them were younger than I was.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. So yeah, that probably could be helpful too. So now you're so you were an engineer, now you're in marketing. I'm assuming that in marketing, there's a lot more customer facing activity as opposed to when you were just, sitting in front of your computer designing. When did you realize that speaking and just becoming more proficient in communicating with others could be a benefit to you?
Well, communicating with others is always people skills and communication has always been my forte. I've always been really good at that. And I think during the brand marketing days, I was also heavily involved with teaching programs for youth and doing youth leadership. And so I remember there was a guy there who was a motivational speaker, and he was like, "Bobby, I've seen you with the kids. They're like high school kids," and he's like, "You're really good with them. You're a great speaker. You should be a professional speaker, a motivational speaker." And I was like, "No, I'm trying to move up in the corporate world and try to get to that, that cushy job, whatever." And then when I was in brand marketing, they were having a couple of offsites, and I volunteered to do a team building event for the group of 50 people. And after I did, they're like, "Bobby, that was great. You organized the group, you led everybody, you brought you debriefed and brought the insights back to the workplace. Like, have you ever thought about doing it for a living?" And I was like, no, I'm trying to get up there, because I'm talking to my bosses. I don't want to let them know that I want to leave. And I hadn't really thought about it. But then a few years into brand marketing, I was starting to feel like this is not good work-life balance. When I was at Dove, I was working 80 hours a week. I had no life outside of that. And I thought that was crazy. And I asked, what's a priority? They said, everything's a priority. I said, well, that's crazy. That makes no sense to me. I have 30 projects, so then you want them all to be done half-assed. It made no sense to me whatsoever. Clearly, some things you need to let go because we're all overworked. My boss is working 80 hours a week. I'm working 80 hours a week, and just it's not sustainable. And so actually, what happened was eventually I started to get sick. I started to have fatigue and exhaustion, and then I found out later on that I got diabetes. And so a normal blood sugar level in Canada is 6.2. My blood sugar in December was 12. My blood sugar in March, when I went back to the doctor, was 16. And they said, you need to get this under control, otherwise it's going to kill you. And so I went to my boss. I said, listen, I need to get some control. I want to take 2 weeks off. Then I want to get my hours back to something normal, like maybe 50 hours a week, and then go from there. And then 3 weeks later, I got a package. See ya. And I was like, wow, okay. I guess they don't want to support. They don't want to support me. And but the package was nice because I'd only been there for 8 months, but the package was nice because I kind of blamed them for the stress levels that made my pancreas snap. And it was a nice package. Like, oh, seriously? All right, see ya. And I left. I was very happy to leave. And then I had to figure out what I want to do. And I spent a while trying to figure it out. But then I went to my 4 best friends and I called them the Council of Umar, my council. And I said, guys, I'm not sure I want to do brand marketing anymore. I mean, it was good, but the culture is too, it doesn't really work-life balance that I want. And then they said, have you ever thought about becoming a motivational speaker? And I was like, you know what? I have, because people have been telling me this for years. And so that's when I started putting in the effort to think about that. So I built my personal brand. I did a whole analysis, surveys, got feedback from my network. And over a 3 to 4 month period, I started honing on what I could do. And it's been that was almost 15 years ago.
Wow, what a story. You working, so you left engineering because it was repetitive. You go into brand marketing, which was better. It wasn't repetitive, had more women there, which was nice. And then but then eventually your pancreas gives out. It's like, okay, your body's telling you it's time to go. You ask for some accommodation, they give you a package, you're out on your ass. Now what's Bobby Umar going to do? His friends say, become a speaker, something that you've been thinking about for years, I guess, at that point. But now this is the final push that you need. Okay, other people are saying I should do this now. These people you trust are saying that you should do this now. Let me do this now. Let me be a speaker. Right. So now Bobby Umar is the speaker. So what does Bobby Umar talk about when he gives speeches?
Well, in the beginning, so that first guy who taught me, who suggested I become a speaker, sorry for the noise construction outside. The first guy who taught me to be a speaker, he said, come up with 3 topics and just push it out there and tell everybody you know. So that's what I did. And I remember the first couple of speeches I did were on the 3 Ps of leadership. And what's interesting, though, is that as I started speaking and doing some training, I started to see that there were certain needs that people had. So one was team building. So a lot of people wanted me to come and do some team building events because I'd done that a while. And the second one, I became an expert on networking. They're like, well, you're such a good connector and relationship guy. How do you do that? So I started talking about networking almost all the time. It was a very popular topic. A lot of young people wanted it, young leaders and entrepreneurs. And so I did that a lot. I ended up writing a book about networking and became my big thing. And then one day I talked about personal branding and how it applies to networking. And next thing people are like, whoa, personal branding, what's that? That's cool. And next thing you know, that became a big topic. And then I started doing social media and talking about things. And next thing you know, my social media blew up to over like 500,000 followers. And so the 3 things I talk about are networking or building meaningful relationships. I talk about personal branding, discovering the self, building better mindset. And I talk about social media marketing or thought leadership branding, using LinkedIn, Twitter, whatnot, and building that power of connection with people. So those are the 3 topics I talk about pretty much all the time now.
Wow. It's so interesting, Bobby, that you were an engineer and you talk about networking. And when you really think about engineers, you don't think about networking. We're usually the type of people we're in our cubicle, we don't want to talk to anybody. But then again, if you are that way, you end up being one of those engineers that's mad all the damn time because somebody else got the promotion and the pay raise that you wanted or thought you deserved, but you weren't very good at networking. You weren't very good at talking to the people who are decision makers, who had the authority to change your career. And now you're sitting in the cubicle all angry. But I guess you figure all this out early on. So kudos to you for doing so.
Well, what's interesting though is that at the time when I was an engineer, I wasn't networking. Like I was terrible at it because I didn't think about it. I was just in my cubicle on my computer, just doing the work. And I enjoyed my lunches and I enjoyed our softball and volleyball games after work. But I never really thought about networking in the office place to really build those connections. I only thought about that afterwards, where I realized, okay, no, this is really, it works well and I'm good at it. But thank you to the engineering people because they've hired me a lot to come in and help not only new engineers but also the old school folks to help them be better at networking, building relationships.
Absolutely. So when it comes to your topics, are there certain, I guess, industries that you speak to, or are you industry agnostic?
Well, I mean, when you think about thought leadership branding, storytelling, speaking, relationship building, personal brand, all that kind of stuff, it applies everywhere. So I've never had to worry about targeting an audience. However, I do try to target some audiences only because I think there's greater need. So I definitely focus on tech engineering. I think that there's a lot of greater need there, particularly for soft skills. And I also do like to target like startups, new business, small business owners, entrepreneurs. I think they need a lot of help as well. And then the other one is really senior executives, because they're lacking on the digital side. They're pretty good with the leadership stuff, but I think they're lacking on the digital side. So I'm doing like a full training for executives on how to even like put a comment on LinkedIn, or how to tweet, because they have no idea how to do it. So
that's funny.
It's fun. Yeah.
Can I get my assistant to do that?
They're like, what do I say? Just say what you want. Just be nice. Don't be a jerk.
That's funny. Well, yeah, I could definitely see that, and I could certainly see the service or the topics that you provide, especially for those particular groups being needed. So it was smart of you to target those audiences specifically. When it comes to presenting in front of people, do you have a process for putting your presentations together? And if so, what is it?
I do have a process. The first thing is to talk to the client. What do you want? What's your objective? Who's your audience? What do they like? What do they hate? What are their biggest challenges? What do you want to get out of this presentation? Like, what is there a call to action? Is there something you want to do? And then, are we going to revisit this? I always ask that one because I want to plant the seed that maybe I can come back. Maybe we should revisit this in terms of where do you want to be in 3 months or 6 months, and let's revisit that. So definitely have the meeting with people. Engineer, right? What's the path to get there? And so the path to get there, for me, my standard is I'm a big storyteller, and I'm also really big on vulnerability. And so I'm able to do that very, really well. So I always start off with a story. That's a personal story that's usually pretty vulnerable, about something I was challenged with that's relating to the topic, right? So I was speaking to the death care industry. I talked about my dealing with my grandfather's death. I was talking to another group about financial matters. I talked about a financial challenge I had about something. So I share that stuff. And then I go right into, and then the other thing I do is I always have a section where I ask them questions and listen to them. Tell me because then what happens is I take what they said and I bring it to the end of the conversation. Hey, we addressed this. Did we not address this? And they love that. They love the fact that I invested in what they were going through as I put my presentation together. I'd already pre-understood it anyways, because I had that pre-meeting with the organizers. And then, I'm a big believer in having a story arc with my presentation where I talk about that main point, and I go back to it several times to really drive home the point. And then in the midst of all the stories, there's also these statistics and data as well as case studies. Because if my personal story and their personal stories and the data and the case studies doesn't convince them, nothing will. And in the end, they're like, yeah, man, you really made some compelling points, and I got to do this. So that's my overall structure. And then I also tell people early on, I'm going to give you my slides. So just listen, let's talk. And at the end, I'm going to give you 10, 15 minutes to ask whatever you want, because I find some of the best nuggets come in the Q&A. So I would leave time for Q&A as well.
Yeah,
that's my structure.
Nice. I really like the addition of the case studies and the stats, just in case people weren't swayed by the stories and the vulnerability. You hit them with the case studies and the stats. Well,
how can they say no, right?
How can you say no? Absolutely. And I once heard a quote. I don't know if I can't really say it word for word, but paraphrasing. People don't remember what you said, but they remember how you made them feel. I hate that quote so much, because I really want, especially if you're talking to people, you really do want them to remember the things you said. You want them to. It's not just about, okay, I feel good about what this guy said, but okay, what am I going to do about it afterwards? And you're going to figure out what you're going to do about it afterwards, because you remembered what he talked about, or he or she talked about. So, you having all this information in there, hopefully it's presented in such a way that's memorable so that people can recall it and then know what they have to do afterwards.
Well, I think the idea behind that quote is the feeling piece, right? So when you connect on an emotional level with people, then they're more compelled to act, right? People will act and move because of two things. Either they feel the pain or they feel the bliss, right? So if they feel the bliss point that's over there that they want to get to, they're going to move towards that. If they feel the pain of where they are, they want to move away from it. So if you can talk about both and make them feel both the pain and the bliss of their situation, then they're more likely to move. So the idea is to get people to understand what that emotion is to trigger that action.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way to look at it. Do you ever get nervous before you give presentations? And if so, how do you deal with your nerves?
Yeah, I think having nerves is normal, and I think we should always have nerves, because if you don't, then you're going to become an arrogant, egotistic, and narcissistic speaker, which is a terrible, terrible thing. Nerves show that you care. Nerves show that you want to do your best. Nerves show that you want to deliver. And sometimes they're less than other. Like some audiences, the nerves are less, but they're still there. Like I still want to do a good job. My ideal audience are usually like young people, like and just young leaders. So when I speak to them, I'm not as nervous as when I'm speaking to CEOs. Or actually, the most nerve-wracking one was speaking to grades 6 and 7, because
Oh yeah.
and Toy Story references, and I think it worked. To keep it interesting for them. But in terms of how I deal with nerves, I mean, number one, you can use your nerves to your advantage. So, like when I did my first TED Talk on the 5 C's of connection, I saw a teddy bear, and I started pacing back and forth. And I find the energy gets me going, so I move back and forth to keep myself moving. And then I saw the bear and I hugged it, and I was like, "Well, this is good. This makes me feel good." And then I took the bear on stage when I started my presentation, and I gave it a hug, and then I started my talk, because I was very. And so I was very nervous about that one. And so that really helped me. The second thing that helps is mindset, right? You don't have to be a speaker, be a teacher, right? You don't have to be Tony Robbins or Barack Obama as a speaker. You have to be like a teacher. Just teach. What are the 1 or 2 things you want to teach people, and focus on that, as opposed to being this incredible speaker. And then I think the other thing to get rid of nerves is to organize, prepare yourself really well. So you structure your presentation in a way that your audience will resonate with, in a way that you feel comfortable presenting, and you rehearse it over and over again so that you know your stuff. And if you do those, then the nerves will go down to a minimum.
I really like your point about, if you're nervous, it's a sign that you actually care about what you're talking about. I fully agree with that as well. Because if you don't care, then yeah, you're probably not going to be all that nervous. You're going to get up there and you don't really care what the outcome is, and
you're gonna ramble on forever.
Yeah, those are the worst presentations.
Yeah.
Just like, get me out of here. Absolutely. This has been great talking to you, Bobby. Thank you for being a guest. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, I mean, you can go to my 2 websites, rayallen.com or dypb.ca, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Clubhouse, you name it, under the handle Rayhan Bobby, which are my first 2 names.
Wonderful. Well, everybody, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. Consider checking out the Teach the Geek to Speak Society. It's an online membership, monthly membership, where you can get help or ongoing support with your public speaking. You can learn more about it at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Bobby.
Thank you.